Hey everyone, this is Norbert, and today I wanted to bring you a guide for the new Chaos Ritual deck, the Rollout deck, LADR, whatever you want to call it. This is the new poster child deck of the new set, Chaos Origins, and I've seen the cards and I figured this is probably a deck that I would enjoy a lot, and after playing with it, that is correct. But when I looked at resources online to learn the deck, all I found was like one card combos, which is not really the gameplay this deck does. This is not like a traditional, I'm doing my setup in combo deck, because the setup is very simple. Think of Draco Tail. That's probably why I like it so much. You just set up a standard-ish board, doesn't have too many interactions, and the devil lies in the details. So like, how do you interact with your opponent, and when do you do it, and knowing what you do in specific matchups is the key to mastering this deck. And I didn't find any resources, so I figured I'm just going to learn the deck myself, play some matches, and bring you the things that I learned. And we just basically learn the deck together. So today we're going to go through each and every card. We're going to go through some combos, just the basic combos, not too much into combos. And then we're going to go deeper into like interactions and game plan knowledge, things like that. So if you already know, for example, the cards, what they do, and if you already know the one card combos, everything will be timestamped, so you can just skip ahead to whatever interests you. But if you're new to this deck, completely new, you can grab a nice cup of tea and just enjoy the whole show. So let's hop into the first section. So let's start off with the cards, and I'm going to order these by like significance to the game plan. So we're going to start with the two boss monsters. These are commonly one-offs. Sometimes I've seen people play like a 1-in-2 ratio, but in most of lists you'll see 1-in-1. So what these guys do, and these are your main game plan, is they are unaffected by card effects unless they target them. And then also they will have effects on the field on summon and then continuous effects. So the Magician of Black Chaos, when summoned, adds you a spell from the graveyard to your hand. So that is non-targeting, you just grab something back. And this is, of course, extremely valuable in a grind game. You can just grab back any spell utility that you have in the grave, and for every situation, you just have a tool. That is one thing. And the other very important thing is, as long as this card is on the field, your opponent cannot destroy or banish your spells and traps. Once we get to the next card, you'll know why this is so important. And the last one is, once per turn, you can target one card your opponent controls and banish it face down. So that's an ignition effect, of course, but once it is your turn, you can just pick apart your opponent's board with this. Then we have the Black Luster Soldier, which on summon targets a card on the field and banishes it. This banishes face up. And it cannot be destroyed by battle, very important. And then also, once it destroys a monster by battle, it gains 1,500 attack, and then it can attack again. So this can be your finisher, similar to the old Black Luster Soldiers. So these are two main boss monsters, and this is your general game plan, is trying to keep these ones alive. Now, they are susceptible to targeting removal. So what if your opponent just fallen the virtues? Target one of them, they're outed, right? That is why we have the Mind Shuffle. Mind Shuffle is a continuous trap card that says once per turn you can, during either player's turn, add one monster that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness, and then you discard a card. That is one effect, your starting effect. But the most important effect is that every time your opponent activates a card effect, a card or effect, you can take one level 7 or higher monster back to your hand and summon a monster that mentions Ritual Light Darkness, ignoring its summoning conditions. And that is how you can dodge targeting removal. Because if your opponent targets this card with Fawn the Virtuous, back, you summon the next one, and that is how you juggle your Tower's monsters. You cannot use the two effects in the same chain. So like, you cannot add and bounce in the same chain. However, and some people misunderstood that, the bounce effect is not once per chain. So once this is flipped face up, this is important that this has to be face up already, you can bounce to your heart's content in the same chain. However, note that the bouncing part is cost. So if you only have one monster, obviously you don't have anything else to bounce for that. So that is the main game plan here, like the main interactions. And There is also another monster, the Black Chaos, which cannot be normal summoned or set and must be special summoned by shuffling a ritual monster from your hand or graveyard to your deck. This is not an activated effect, so this just comes down. And this, while you have a ritual spell in the graveyard, is unaffected by card effects. So this doesn't care about targeting, it is just unaffected. And once per turn, you can banish 2 cards your opponent controls. That is non-targeting ignition effect, of course, but very strong board breaking tool. And the other effect is that you can discard this card to place a trap that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness. So this just places the Mind Shuffle from your deck. So this is a starter, but also a board breaking tool, but also it is a towers that you can summon and bounce, because this cannot be normal summoned or set, and it has to be special summoned by one effect, but Mind Shuffle ignores summoning conditions. So you can shuffle these around as you like. Next up, we have our, where is he? Griffoh. Griffoh is our main starter. This card has the effect that, as a quick effect, you can discard it and then you set 1 spell or trap that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness from your deck. It can be activated this turn. So you can set the Mind Shuffle and you can immediately activate it. This is important because you can use this on your opponent's turn. We get to that later. But also note that if you set it and immediately activate it, you can activate the effect to add a monster on activation. So this cannot be Ghost Ogred because it wasn't face up before. Just something to note. Next, we have another searcher is our Corrupted Ritual Record. This is not a specific Light and Darkness ritual card, but it came out in the same set and it obviously is to support the deck. So this card says you show a ritual spell from your hand or deck, and then you add a monster that mentions that. So this doesn't have to add a ritual monster, which is important. So you can add also like the Griffoh, the Black Chaos, but you can also add your ritual monsters if you want to. It also has the other effect that if a ritual monster leaves your field and you don't have anything else on the field except for face-up ritual monsters, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand. Just something to note. Next, we have talked a lot about Ritual of Light and Darkness. This is Ritual of Light and Darkness. It is a ritual spell. It summons these two by either tributing, like a regular ritual spell, or banishing a monster or multiple monsters from your graveyard that have the levels required. Speaking of levels required, Griffoh can count as the whole tribute. That it doesn't matter if you tribute it from hand, from field, or you banish it from the grave. This can just count as the whole tribute for one of these, which is nice to know. But this doesn't stop here. This actually is a very strong grind tool. When it's in the grave, you can activate the effect to add it and another card in your grave that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness to your hand. Doesn't have to be a monster. You can, for example, if you're out of your Mind Shuffle, just grab both back and then play on. So that's important. Next, we have the Celtic Sage. This is one of your utility tools, and this on normal or special summon, this has a crazy effect. So if this is summoned, you can show your opponent your hand. And then, if you have a card that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness, you can draw 3 cards and discard 2. So, obviously, it's extremely strong value tool, but also, worth noting, you don't have to have a Ritual of Light and Darkness card in your hand to activate this effect. So if you want to bluff your opponent, you normal summon this, and you activate the effect. What are they going to do? Are they going to ash it? Because do they want to give you a Graceful Charity? Or are they just going to negate it even though you don't have a Light and Darkness card in hand? The other effect, also very important, is once per turn, you can tribute it from the field to summon a Chaos Ritual monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning condition. So this just is basically another ritual spell plus ritual fodder in itself. Then we have the Summon Skull. Now this card also is extremely strong. So if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can send 4 cost Ritual of Light, ritual spell. This is actually a generic card. You can send a ritual spell from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and then add 1 monster that is mentioned on the ritual spell to your hand. So what you're going to do is this can send, if this goes to the graveyard, you send the Light and Darkness, and you grab one of these 2, which is nice. The other effect, though, is one of the main reasons the deck is so strong, and that is this card is in the hand or in the graveyard. You can target 3 cards in grave or banishment of both players. One of them has to be a Ritual of Light and Darkness card, so anything that mentions it. And then you shuffle them back. So if you have this in the grave, you just take, I don't know, your banished Griffoh and your 2 monsters in your opponent's graveyard, the branded cards, whatever, shuffle them back, then this summons itself. And that is an extremely valuable grind tool. And the big reason why this is so good. Plus, you just get a free 2500 body, which is level 6 dark. Not irrelevant if we have a level 4 light right next to it. So, just so you know. Lastly, for this archetype, we have utility cards. Most importantly, we have the Chaos Magical Hats, which is going to be one of your main forms of interaction. And that card says, when your opponent activates a monster effect or a normal spell or trap card. So very important of this wording, right? It has to be normal spell and trap, and it has to be just the activation of the card. Of course, normal spell and trap cards, you don't activate the effects because they are on the field. But like, for example, a grave effect, you cannot negate because this just says activate a spell or trap card. Then you choose 3 spells and traps with different names from your deck, and 1 monster on the field that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness. You shuffle them like the original Magical Hats, and then you change the effect of your opponent's card to destroy one of these 4 cards. So it is basically a negate, but it also gets you 3 monsters basically for free. The hats are face down, but they are level 8. So how that works is if you tribute them for a ritual spell, they count as level 8, but they do not count as level 8 for Mind Shuffle until they're flipped up. So that is worth noting. But basically, this acts as like 3 spells from your deck, puts it in the grave, and it is an interruption. But as also more importantly, it just gets spells into rotation, which is important because of the chaos. So that is the Chaos Magical Hats, and that is basically your negate type card. And lastly, we have the Chaos Mystic box, which is not as popular. However, I still wanted to mention it just because I just wanted to show off the complete deck. So this card says, when your opponent activates a card effect that targets another card or cards you control, return one of these targeted cards to your hand, face down, reveal it. And if you do destroy 1 card on the field, then you can special summon a monster from your hand that mentions Light or Darkness Ritual with a different name than the card revealed, return to the hand, ignoring the summoning conditions. You can this card in the owner's possession is destroyed by opponent's card. You can special summon 1 ritual monster that mentions Light or Darkness Ritual from hand or deck. So this would just be another layer of interaction, especially since targeting is the main way your opponent outs your cards, either by targeting these and outing them that way, or by targeting your back row and outing it that way. So that's just a quick overview of the cards. Let's hop into a simple 1-card combo. So just to show off what the deck wants to set up, I just have the Griffoh 1-card combo. Now, this is not a crazy 1-card combo. This is just the general setup. And I just wanted to show you what you can expect playing this deck and what you want to look for. So Griffoh, as a quick effect, as I said, we can discard it to place a spell or trap. Noteworthy is you can do this in draw phase, so that way you play around draw the best. If you have Griffoh, basically Griffoh means that your opponent's draw is useless if you open it. Whereas other cards, you have to make some concessions to draw. But here, if you just do it in the draw phase, they can't really do anything. You can immediately flip this up and immediately use the effect. If you do it like this, where you flip it up and immediately use the Surge effect, they cannot Ogre it. They can Gravekeeper's Watcher it, but Gravekeeper's Watcher is not as popular. So unless you see it, then I would just play around Ogre here. So you're going to activate the card and immediately use the effect to add a monster that mentions Ritual of Light and Darkness, and then discard a card. So we're going to grab the skull, Summon Skull, and discard it, and then this effect activates, sends for cost the ritual spell. So you always get the ritual spell. So even if you place this in the main phase because you had to use Black Chaos and you get drolled on the add and discard of this, you will still get like the ritual spell, but you can use the ritual spell then in your opponent's turn to add back one of these cards, and at least set up maybe something. So, but here, let's say we don't get rolled. We can't get rolled because we're in draw phase, of course. We just grab our ritual monster, and that's going to be our Chaos Magician. Next, you're going to use the Light and Darkness Ritual effect to add back a card from your graveyard, and you're going to add the Summon Skull here. And then you're going to go use the Light and Darkness Ritual to summon your Black Chaos by banishing the Griffoh. So you're going to summon this, and then this card on summon effect triggers, adds a spell back. We only have one spell because that's the combo that we do. And that is what you do on your turn if you only open this. Now, of course, if you open anything else, you're going to search for pieces that you need instead. But if you only have this and 4 non-engine, then you just do this. Of course, this is not where it ends. Once you pass your opponent, any chance you get, you can use the Mind Shuffle effect again to add and discard. And this time it cannot be ogred because we have the Magician on the field. So that is nice. It also can't be fallen at the Virtuist. So that is nice. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab whatever you want. Let's say another Griffoh. In this case, if you don't have anything else, that's probably the best thing. And you're going to discard your Summon Skull. Now, Summon Skull once again will trigger and send for cost your second ritual if you play it. If you don't play 2 ritual, I would advise playing 2, like this is standard, but you can also send the one from your hand. That's fine. But you just send the ritual, and now you grab the other monster. So now we have 2 in rotation. Now we can start bouncing, and then we can also use the Griffoh here to set up our Chaos Magical Hats. So now what we have is we have the interaction where we have the Mind Shuffle and the Black Chaos, with the Black Luster Soldier. So this on summon will banish something, and this on summon will add back a spell. And so that is one interaction, is the banish. The other interaction is going to be your Chaos Magical Hats. And that is pretty much it for interactions. This does not stop your opponent from playing whatsoever. You only want to establish your resource loop here. It's worth noting that the Chaos Magical Hats, once you use them, your towers is face down, so you cannot bounce it with the Mind Shuffle anymore. So this basically is your last-ditch effort to survive the turn here. But yeah, this is just Griffoh 1-card combo. Again, this is not about disrupting your opponent. This is just setting up your resource loop and trying to get through with that, and the other 4 cards in your hand, of course. So that's the combo. Let's go into the game plan. So now that we've looked at the cards and the main combo, I think it should paint a clear picture of what this deck is about. And the main objective is survive. So, because if you think about the Summon Skull and the Ritual of Light and Darkness that are in your grave, you have a grind game that is probably the best in the game right now, like even better than Branded. Branded, of course, has the better initial push, but in the long game, mostly because of the interaction of the skull, this should outgrind Branded, because this also interacts with the banished pile very well, whereas Branded has to go into Dogma to touch their banished pile, and we can also take some of their follow-up away from the grave with the Summoned Skull. And yeah, so if you get to a grind game, you should win most of the games. And the issue, of course, is that your initial board is not stopping your opponent from playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Unless you open like this and 4 hand traps, which is not generally the game plan of this deck. So how do you do that? You have limited interruptions. So that means, of course, that you have to know where to interrupt. So that means you need to have a lot of matchup knowledge. For example, if you only have the 1 banish, what do you use it on, right? So, for example, in testing, I played against Fairy Tail, and my first game, I just got OTK'd because they don't care about the tower. They set up the field spell, attack me directly, and I lose the game. I can have all the value in the world. If I don't have life points left, I can't play it. So, what I did then in game 2 is I used my Black Luster Soldier as soon as the field spell went up. So Black Luster Soldier comes down, banishes the field spell, and even though they get their value, the field spell is gone. And the field spell says you can only activate it once per turn. So even though they would have another in hand, they cannot activate it. And that means they cannot attack me directly. And Black Luster Soldier, of course, is also indestructible by battle. So if you just place this down in defense, doesn't matter how much attack they have. Looking at URS, they cannot just like kill you here, unless they have piercing damage. So keep that in mind. And we also have, of course, the Chaos Magical Hat as your other disrupt of the main combo. And this is your last ditch effort. So you have to know, if you use this, you're out of your resource loop. So you only use this if it's an emergency or if you have another monster on the board. So of course, with like actual hands, you can also just have like any other monster on the field, right? Sometimes you even open like 2 rituals. So if you have like any other monster, you can, of course, the best case would be a used Celtic Guardian. You can just flip this down, this stays up. So, but if you only have like the 1 towers, then this is just an emergency button. If your opponent would out the setup anyway, you just use this and hope that the 4 tokens plus whatever else you have will get you through. So another thing where your opponent could out the board is, of course, getting rid of the Mind Shuffle. So like if you don't have this on the board, right, they could fawn the virtues. So it's important to always keep in mind that if you have this setup, for example, and they fawn the virtues, the Mind Shuffle, you can bounce and then summon this. And then on resolution, this is on the field, so this cannot be destroyed. Very important. However, if you have this setup and you use this on any disruption that maybe didn't even matter, and you bounce it for cost, then they chain fawn the virtues, you're pretty sad, right? So keep that in mind. What are your lose conditions in every situation? Again, you don't have infinite disruptions here. So you can have, of course, this setup. The other setup would, of course, be just getting rid of 1 towers. For example, with a Kaiju post side, they tribute this for a Kaiju. You can bounce the Kaiju, but then they just Kaiju you again. Or they just give you a Santa Claus and you can't even bounce it because Santa Claus is level 6. So that would mean another setup would be 2 high-level monsters. Doesn't matter which one. The easiest one is just doing the standard combo while having Federalis Harmonia in hand, which is level 7. So if you have this setup and they somehow like out this, but you still have the BLS, you can still Harmonia your opponent. And then you can get back into your resource loop by summoning this. And now you obviously don't have this, but for example, if you have like a Black Chaos, you can still loop these. Well, this is just unaffected on the field, but should be good enough. So that is one setup where you can help getting outed. The other thing would be, of course, you have the Griffoh in hand. And sometimes you can just set up a second Mind Shuffle, which is standard, playing 2 Mind Shuffle, because the Griffoh can only set from deck. So if you draw Griffoh and Mind Shuffle as your first turn in hand, you cannot do the Griffoh stuff, which would be really bad. So one game plan would just be that. So I wanted to talk about the Black Luster Soldier a bit more. So this card cannot be destroyed by battle. So it is unaffected by targeting effect and cannot be destroyed by battle, which means for some decks this is extremely hard to out. And knowing what the outs for a specific deck is very important. Because, for example, against Elf Note usually doesn't play that many outs to this card because their continuous trap doesn't target. They have the Chaos Angel, that would be an out to that. And sometimes they play Doom Dragon, which would be an out to that. And then, I don't know, your Harmonia targets like Malong, Packbit, they would be outs to that. So keep in mind like what the matchup is. And for example, I had a game against Elf Mode where they made Chaos Angel turn 1. They had a full board, and all I got was this Black Luster Soldier on the field. I scooped the game, but later I realized they didn't have an out left, right, in that scenario. So I could have just sat on this and started to outgrind my opponent there. So very important to know what is your out, what is your opponent's out to the Black Luster Soldier. So one thing also worth noting is that this Griffoh also has the effect that you can discard it, and the next battle damage you get is 0. So if your opponent goes to swing with, I don't know, a huge Jupiter and Doomsy wants to attack you directly, you can discard the Griffoh and just not take damage, which is pretty cool. So that is the general game plan. It's just set this up, try to get through the turn, and then you can start outgrinding your opponent with Summon Skull, with the Light and Darkness Ritual, and with your removal options, which are these big monsters. So that is general game plan. Let's go into more specific cards. So I wanted to talk about Griffoh more specifically because it is a quick effect you can use on your opponent's turn. So whenever your opponent starts the game, you go second. One thing you can do is use the Griffoh to set up your Mind Shuffle on your opponent's turn, and then use the effect, grab the Summon Skull, discard it, it sends the ritual, and it adds you like a monster, like in this case, with us. And in the beginning, I only did that when I had something like a Federalis Harmonia, because wow, I can now have the Mind Shuffle, and once your opponent activates an effect, you can Harmonia. Harmonia sends, for example, if you play the branded version, you can even send Lulua Lilith. And this is just incredible setup for the grind game, because it's your opponent's first turn. You got the Harmonia out. You set up your Lulua Lilith to get an Ecclesia in the end phase, which puts up a lot of pressure because Albaz is a one-card starter in this deck, as you might have known if you watched other combo videos. And this is a level 7 monster, so because the Mind Shuffle is on the field, you can start already putting up your towers, and this is also a targeting banish. So you get a banish, plus you get your whole resource loop live, except for the other ritual monster, which you can get in your next turn, right? So that is a very strong turn 0 play, and that is obviously the first thing I did with Griffoh when I went second. But once I played the deck more, and we take away the Harmonia here, I learned that you can still just do the Griffoh, and you should just do the Griffoh if you only have it. Now, this requires, once again, matchup knowledge, because you want to do the Griffoh as late as possible, because like ideally in their end phase, when they don't have like a Fallen Virtuous, if they already have set it, and they can't go like SP banish the Mind Shuffle in the main phase. However, you have to know what interactions your opponents will do, because once they end on a negate, you cannot Griffoh anymore. So you have to understand the matchup and their combos to know when to Griffoh. But generally, your game plan is going to be, you're going to Griffoh on your opponent's turn. If you only have Griffoh and Engine, you're still going to go Mind Shuffle, grab back the Skull, discard Skull, Skull effect, send, you grab yourself a ritual monster of your choice, and your hand is still going to be 5 cards now. Let's take some cards here just to show that, right? This is your hand. And even if they out the Mind Shuffle here, once it's your turn, you draw your 6th card, right? And then you can go and use the Summon Skull, shuffle back your Mind Shuffle. If it's your only one, you have to do that. But I would, again, advise to do 2. Shuffle 2 of their grave. This comes back. And you can also use the Light and Darkness Ritual to add back itself and Griffoh, which can now be used to either set up the Mind Shuffle again or to get the magical hats online. So let's do that. And now you already have the Griffoh on grave, the Ritual of Light and Darkness in hand to banish it, plus the Black Luster Soldier. So if you look at our hand here, we start the turn with 8 cards in our hand, plus the Summon Skull. And that is, of course, a lot of pressure for your opponent, especially since they know that one of these cards get you to ritual summon here. So just for that, Griffoh turn 0 is very important here. Another thing you can do, and this is going to be back to the Harmonia, is if you open Harmonia plus Summon Skull, what you can do is once you Harmonia your opponent, you try to find a spot where you Harmonia them and do Pack Bid, because Pack Bid here can then go and send the Summon Skull to move one of their monsters, but it will also trigger the Summon Skull here to send the Ritual of Light and Darkness and add your ritual monster of your choice. So now once the turn comes back to you, you're going to go Ritual of Light and Darkness to add itself back, and then you can go activate Ritual of Light and Darkness, and Pack Bid is at level 8, so you can just banish this as your ritual fodder for the Black Luster Soldier. So that means that it doesn't have to be just Griffoh. Now, your turn 0 plays are not Holy Sue, where they just obliterate your opponent's board. but it will give you a lot of advantage. And if you have the Griffoh plus Harmonia combo, you will also just establish the towers on your opponent's turn, which is insanely strong. So that is just mentioning Griffoh interactions here. So one thing I wanted to talk about too is the Black Chaos. Now Black Chaos reads like, depending on what angle you look at it, it reads like your third towers or it reads like your second Griffoh. But the most important thing is, and why this card is so strong and why is the secret rare, is it is both. So it's both end board piece and starter. It is so helpful for breaking boards because the way you summon this is by shuffling a ritual from your grave or hand into the deck, and that is not an activated effect. So this just comes down, and once it's on the field, it is unaffected by activated card effects, as long as the ritual is in the grave. So the way you would out this is non-activated effects, or continuous effects, or shuffling or banishing the ritual from the grave, and then using a removal on it, which is expensive. But if you don't or can't react to this, this has the ignition effect to banish 2 cards of your opponent. And that is obviously, for breaking a board, is extremely valuable because you can just, your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do most of the time. So they might even have to flip up some cards, and then you banish whatever is left on the field that would deny your place from your hand, whatever you have, to go through. And on top of that, it's a 3000 attack beater, and it's level 8. So you can start swapping it with Mind Shuffle, or you can just tribute it for the ritual if you need to, and all of that. Extremely versatile card and not to be underestimated. I just wanted to talk about some applications and why this card is so good. The last card I want to talk about is the Chaos Magical Hats. Now this is your negate, of course, but it's also more than that. Again, we are a grind-focused deck, so worth noting for the negate, it can negate unaffected monsters because it just changes the effect. We have precedents for that, but this is more than just a negate, because once you use this effect, you get to pick 3 spells or traps from your deck and then summon them as monsters. And what that does is you can actually just thin your deck for spell cards that are important and put them into rotation for your Chaos Magician to add back. So one thing I like to do, like my current deck list has some important spells, being the Talons, the Called By, a Super Poly, and then I also play Fond the Virtues, and I play the High Spirits version right now. I wanted to try it. So these are all very important spells to get into rotation. Now, my highest priority, of course, would be the High Spirits because it can come back naturally. But any of these spells you would get into rotation for your Black Chaos to just add back. So once you have those in rotation, you can always pick them back. So let's say we activate the hats and we get all of these. Now your Called By and Talents are in rotation. So let's say your opponent picks this one, hit the Chaos Magician, but you now have all these cards. So they are level 8, but they're face down, so you cannot Mind Shuffle them. You can tribute them, of course, but just noteworthy. But if they cannot clear all of them, you can actually, like, let's say they clear this one, but like, let's say this one survives, right? You can actually, on your turn, flip summon your Called By the Grave. And when's the last time you flip summoned Called By the Grave? Now it's a level 8 monster. So let's say you have this guy in hand, you add it back with like a Chaos Ritual. Once your opponent activates an effect, you just mount the Called By, summon the Magician, add Talents. That is pretty good. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that you have to 100% play these cards in this deck. These are just good cards right now in the format anyway, so I just play them regardless. But like, if I get the chance, I don't have them in rotation, I just put them in rotation with the Chaos Magical Hats, and now I have access to them. It's also important that, shout out to Vexen for that, Chaos Magical Hats cannot get ashed. I don't know the specific ruling on it. If you know, put it down in the comments, but you cannot ash Chaos Magical Hats, which is important because this is your last ditch effort. If it just gets ashed, that is kind of sad. So that is everything for Chaos Magical Hats I wanted to tell you. So for the last segment, let's talk about engines you can play in this deck, because we know Yu-Gi-Oh players love to mix decks, and I just wanted to show you which ones I've seen and give my opinion on it, plus explain what they do. So the most popular one, you've already seen it, is of course the Fallen of the White engine, because Fallen of the White can make a level 8 synchro, being the Crimson King. Crimson King adds you the Crimson Call or Soul Resonator. I'm currently on Crimson Call because Soul Resonator takes a normal summon, which they have both advantages and disadvantages. Soul Resonator takes a normal summon, which this deck doesn't have that many of, but then you can't normal summon the Sage. But Soul Resonator has a protection effect in the grave, destruction protection, which is useful. You'd have to keep the Crimson King on the board for that. And it also works on its own, whereas Crimson Call is doesn't take your normal summon, and also it is a spell, so you can just grab it back from your grave with the Chaos Magician. So that is the options. This is also more popular in the OCG. I'm just playing this right now. So this would mean Crimson Call adds you the Griffoh, and then you can combo from there. Plus you get a Fallen of the Virtuous in the end phase, which is actually very significant because you get a Fallen of the Virtuous on top of your very small board, so you have one more interaction. And a Fallen of the Virtuous doesn't seem like much if you have like a gigantic board, like for example Elf Notes, but if you have like 2 interactions and you get a third one, that is actually huge. So the other thing about Albas is why I like it is it is basically still like just the same deck. You just get a good starter on top of it that adds some utility, because you just have Albas for level 8 synchros. You can also play OG Albas to break boards or have more disruptions, and so on and so forth. So that is the Albas engine, very standard. And I would definitely recommend this one if you have the money for it. If you don't, my friend Atrocity said there is actually an alternative for very budget players, and that is a Resonator engine. You can do that with the Power Vice Dragon, which I think also is a level 8 synchro on its own. Power Vice obviously costs a bit of money because it's a secret rare and is, I think, playable in Genesis. But I think a playset of Power Vice is still less than a single Fallen of the White. So, but you can also not play that one and just play the Resonator Call for the Soul Resonator, and you just have like a little Resonator engine for that. It's worth noting that if you play a Resonator engine and you can make the Crimson Blade Dragon, Crimson Blade Dragon on summon can add a monster level 8 or higher that cannot be normal summoned. So this actually also adds your Black Chaos. So you have like multiple ways where this engine interacts, and that is pretty neat. And it is also, just like the Albas version, a version that, unless you build it for that, doesn't deviate as much from the Tower's game plan, unless you wanted to. If you want to play Synchro Spam plus 1 Tower, I've seen that too. You can do that too, but just let it be known that you can just play a small Resonator engine to get to your Griffoh. Next, we have a very interesting engine. I haven't tried this one yet, but I've seen it in the OCG. Some people play it. It's Nadir Servant. There are some lists that just cite this for the Albas, which is fine. But you can also lean more into the Dogmatica package. And of course, you can grab Dogmatica Maximus and send the Infernoid Evil, I think, the level 1 fusion monster. And when that's sent into the graveyard, you get to add a Void spell or trap. And as a Void spell, I forgot the name, I'm just showing it on the screen, that sends a Fiend from your deck to the grave, being the Summon Skull. And then you have the Summon Skull access here. Of course, that doesn't set up your Mind Shuffle, but this is a level 8, so you can tribute this one, right? Dogmatica generally has synergy with tributing. Now, of course, you would say, why would I Maximus my opponent in a Fallen of the Virtuous format? That is true, but also you have the Summon Skull, so you can just, after doing all that, just use the Summon Skull to shuffle their stuff back. So it's not the end of the world. What's also nice is that Maximus is, of course, a level 8 monster. You can bounce it with Mind Shuffle. And other things is that you have the Dogmatic Ecclesia that you can also search alternatively. And this can search you the Fleur-de-Lis, the Knighted, or Fleur-de-Lis, the Thunderbolt, which are both also level 8 monsters that you can just summon from your hand, giving you more bodies to bounce back and forth and giving you more resilience into removal that way. This is a negate for a monster if you can special summon this if there's an extra deck monster on the field. And if you have a Dogmatic on the field, you can also negate a monster when it comes down, all in one effect. And then this one can summon itself if there's an extra deck monster on the field. And on summon, it sets you a Dogmatica trap. Sadly, it doesn't set a spell, otherwise you could set Form the Virtuous. And if your opponent has a monster with 2,500 or more attack, you can activate it that turn. So what you can do is Dogmatica Punishment. Dogmatica Punishment is then removal. You have the Fleur-de-Lis for your body to bounce. And the punishment can send like a Titanic Lad, which would give you access to Maximus. It could send a Ludo or Lilith, which would give you the Ecclesia if you play both engines, and then you go into Crimson Dragon, and all of that. So that is the Dogmatica engine, which I think is really interesting because it just has such an easy time giving you high-level bodies on the field to bounce. And I love this card a lot. I want to try it. So I might just try that for fun, but I don't think it is better than the Fallen version. This is just very clean. But this is an option you can have. Again, this is a pretty budget version, I think. I don't think anything here is a lot of money unless you play both engines together. Next, I have seen some people on Clowns in the OCG. I don't know what the exact synergy is. Of course, tributing and the Clowns trigger with that, and you draw cards, and Clowns is very grindy. I just don't see how you fit everything into one deck. But you can look up some Clown lists if you want to. And the last one, of course, people have tried to shove Habakiri in there. I couldn't find Habakiri, this is Murakumo. But yeah, Mitsurugi, because the Skull is actually a starter, this can just add Habakiri. And you also have the Corrupted Ritual Records, which is a starter for both decks. So that works together. However, I just think Mitsurugi being more traditionally, having a more traditional game plan just doesn't work that well with the Chaos Ritual stuff. So of course you could bounce your high-level monsters for your Mind Shuffle, but then if you bounce your Mokrumo, it's no longer properly summoned, so why would you do that? And yeah, and I think Mitsurugi has its own grind game that is already very strong. And Mitsurugi already wants to grind, right? It doesn't help you grind better, really. Like, you have more grind for already the best grind in the game. I'd rather have more consistency and more ways to actually survive. But these are just some engines that I found, and feel free to experiment with all of them. You can also let me know what other engines you think are cool to use with that. But that's just a brief overview of these engines. So with that being said, that is it for the video. This is just like an introductory guide. I still hope that I could teach you something. Let me know down below. And yeah, I'll try to make more content on this once I find things that I want to show. Of course, this is not a traditional combo deck, so I can't just make combo guides for it. So these videos for this deck, as opposed to Elf Note, will take a bit more time. So keep that in mind. But with that being said, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.